the judge wrote that the court found allegations and evidence legally insufficient to support a finding of an actual conflict of interest. However, the appearance of impropriety remains and must be handled as previously outlined before the prosecution can proceed. So we do want to bring in Bernard Alexander, who is a trial attorney, to speak more about this. Mr. Alexander, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
So I want to get to this question because as we have been following this breaking news, we have heard that District Attorney Fani Willis is going to be providing a statement. Now, we don't know whether that's going to be in person. We don't know whether that's going to be written, but we have seen her on the stand in this misconduct case, very fiery, very adamant about her innocence in all of this, denying very strongly any wrongdoing, any conflict of interest, any impropriety. What do you think is going to happen? Because the judge has given her two options. You can either remove yourself and the team from the case, or special prosecutor and ex-boyfriend Nathan Wade.
Well, the two choices, it seems pretty simple. She is the district attorney, so she's not going to remove herself. The logical thing is to remove Mr. Wade. Remember, there were a number of attacks of him as to whether he had the qualifications, whether he handled matters at this level. And so the selection of him was always of some concern. But in reality, she was able to successfully get this matter prosecuted with a special jury, and given that the subject matter that is being prosecuted is more important than the conflict issues that have been raised by Trump attorneys.
You know, as you were taking a look at how this case was unfolding, and obviously the breaking news that the judge has given her the decision-making power, so to speak, when it comes to the eventual outcome of this, what are your thoughts? Any surprises? Anything interesting that really stuck out to you?
Well, in terms of the judge's logic, the judge seems to have concluded that there wasn't really any financial interest that was exchanged. There's no benefit that was received by Ms. Willis, and so there's no actual conflict of interest that occurs that should affect the outcome. The issue is preserving the ability of a jury to make a determination without it influencing the outcome. And so the way the judge has handled the matter is to determine that there's no actual conflict, getting rid of the potential conflict that it could exist with Mr. Wade should resolve the issue. So one way or the other, the matter should be able to go forward so that the jury can get to the merits.
So the judge concluded that the allegations and evidence were legally insufficient to support a finding of an actual conflict of interest. But as you know, especially in the matters of law, sometimes the perception of reality then becomes reality. So even if there was no actual conflict of interest, could this still tarnish the case moving forward if Fani Willis remains connected to it?
Well, it's unfortunate, but everybody gets to have their own perception, and there might still be some tarnishing of the outcome. But the reality is the defense team is going to try to exploit that, and that's what occurred here. So the question is, with regard to the actual prosecution, who will be called in to replace Mr. Wade, and what credibility will that person bring to the prosecution? As long as that person is credible, as long as the actual facts associated with the prosecution are at the forefront, then the public should have some ability to rely on the outcome.
This all stemmed from the Georgia election interference case. When it comes to what happens now, what happens, whether Willis remains with her team and then she has to appoint another special prosecutor, which seems the most likely outcome, could that delay or impact the original case at all?
Well, you'd expect some delay because it is a complicated case. There are a number of allegations against 19 individuals. And so you'd expect that the new prosecutor is going to need to come in and get familiar with all of that rather than simply stepping in and starting from where Mr. Wade has ended. And yes, I think that the logical choice is certainly to replace Mr. Wade as opposed to having Ms. Willis withdraw.
Is there any clear winner in the decision that the judge handed down?
Well, I think there's a winner in the sense that Ms. Willis can proceed with the matter. The ultimate goal of the defense was to show that the entire process was poisoned by the fact that of undue influence, what have you, and that's not. That hasn't been determined by the judge to be true. And so the actual substance of the prosecution, I think that has been preserved. And so the issue going forward should be on whether the prosecution is right as to the misconduct that occurred.
Could this issue of misconduct be brought up again?
Well, I expect that it will be. That is the only issue that has had any traction so far. A special grand jury made a determination that there was enough to go forward with the prosecution itself. The prosecution is going forward. The judge has made determinations as to some subject matter and decided that it should be dismissed from the case. But with regard to the substantial majority of the case, it is going forward. So the defense will, I assume, continue to try and exploit this personal issue. But in terms of the substance, we're going to hope that the jury can look past it, and we're hope that the public will look past it, and only opportunists will be looking back at this issue now that the judge has resolved it.
The original case, of course, the Georgia election interference case, that really was of national attention. And then, of course, outspawned the Fani Willis misconduct case that everyone really focused on as well. And a lot of interesting and bizarre testimony unfolded out of that information. What can we expect next?
Well, we can expect that people were going to still try and exploit the issue of these personal issues and try and say that that's driving the prosecution. And so that I doubt that is going to go away, and it's going to be a continuing issue. And so the hope is that Ms. Willis is going to pick someone who is beyond reproach in terms of the next person to step in the role as a special prosecutor. If that occurs, that will lend credence to the prosecution itself. And then we have the actual facts. The actual facts themselves certainly have credence, and there should be some determination as to whether the actions that were taken were inappropriate and violated election laws. That's important to all of us in terms of a republic. So good has come from getting rid of this issue early on. Certainly it would have been a problem for this issue to have been raised during the trial or after the trial. So having gotten this out of the way, hopefully we can get to the merits.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, any last thoughts?
I think that the judge did a good job of explaining his ruling and making it clear why there wasn't an actual conflict of interest. And hopefully in people reviewing that, they'll see that the judge has acted appropriately. And then the next steps will be finding out what Ms. Willis does in terms of picking the best candidate to step in this role and to bolster the credibility of the prosecution.
Bernard Alexander, trial attorney, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a great day.